terms of being not so much post-race, but just being a moment in which white fellow citizens are willing to look at qualifications and vision as opposed to pigmentation and color. That's a breakthrough.
Yeah, it is.
That's a breakthrough. But again, as I said before, I mean, you know, black, brown, and yellow folk have been post-race in that sense for a long time.
Yeah.
Because you look at what are the qualifications. Well, we see white politicians who are concerned about these kinds of issues. Black folk vote for them. It's no big hoopla or anything at all. It's just human interaction, political choices being made, and so on. But your question is a very good one, though. It really is.
Another point, the culture. You've written about, participated in the hip-hop culture to a great extent. Here we have this fundamentally black culture that's extremely popular with white suburban kids. Does this have any impact on the racial equation in America, or is it like, say, my generation when, you know, rhythm and blues came in, it didn't, you know, I mean, everyone loved the music, but I don't know if it had any real political impact. What do you make of it now?
I think it did. I mean, certainly in the 60s that Marvin Gaye and James Brown and Motown and Stax, Curtis Mayfields and others had tremendous impact, not just on people like myself, but on white brothers and sisters too. There's no doubt about that. And it had political implications that allowed for an openness, because any time we're able to revel in each other's humanity, and so much of the best of art allows us to do that, you see. And popular music has been one of the major means in a white supremacist civilization where we could actually be in contact with each other's humanity, even as in the public sphere we had racist institutions and practices at work. Right. And so in that music, jazz was able to do that, popular music with Motown and so forth. Now with hip-hop, you have something new, because here you have the actual hegemonic status of black youth culture among young people. So you have a whole generation of white youth who've been Afro-Americanized by the time they're 15. Completely. They know more about Jay-Z, they know more about I mean, just right across the board.
And so where does that lead, you think?
But it's not. It's negative in some ways because the images are so ugly. That's the problem, you see. It's so deeply sexist and homophobic, and the black men as these urban outlaws involved in sexual conquests and predatory dispositions and so on, so that it represents the worst of American culture and black culture, even as it's couched within the linguistic versatility and sometimes even linguistic genius. Every once in a while, you have linguistic genius, like Rakim and a few others. But so that in that sense it's negative. On the other hand, it recognizes no big thing. I mean, the black-white thing is no big thing for a lot of young white brothers and sisters, as opposed to older folk. Well, I'm having a Negro for dinner. It's going to be a major issue. Yeah, it's fascinating. Why don't you come? You know, well, young people don't give it that. Here you go. I'm going to the club. You going out? Well, I'm going to Letitia. John, you going to Letitia? Yeah, Letitia, get down. I get down too. No big thing. Right. You see that? But politically, there's no consequences. There's no effects, because hip-hop has been so depoliticized since the 80s, when Chuck D and others were heroic in critiquing the vicious darknesses of Reaganism and so forth, you see. And that's partly, we can tell a larger story about that. I tell the story in my book, and of course my recent CD. Bring out Prince. Bring out M1 of Dead Prayers. We bring out KRS-One.
The CD is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you got a chance.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hear that though, brother.
Right? Fascinating, because you take the music and use your actual writing and work with collaborators and vocalize a bit. It only came out, what, a couple of months ago?
It came a couple months ago. Yeah, we were 39 on the Rhythm and Blues hip-hop chart right after Christmas. 39. And I haven't even hit the cities yet, because what I'm hitting every city, high schools, and just give them out. 1,500 CDs, high school students, Detroit, Chicago, LA, and so forth. And all I'm trying to do is say, you know what, y'all? There's a rich tradition of Curtis Mayfield and Carole King. I actually invoke Sondheim in there.
Yeah, I have to say, for those who don't know,
I got Sondheim going in there.
Dr. West is an enormous Sondheim fan.
Brother Genius, he's a genius now. There's no doubt about that.
And
But he's not at the center of the CD, but I mean, he is. He's part of the truth-telling.
Right, I didn't know. Exactly. We don't want to mislead.
You can't see into the woods. So we talk with George and so forth, even Passion. Oh, yes.
And you liked the movie of Sweeney Todd, right?
I did. I thought Johnny Depp, he sings about as good as I do, but that's not bad. That's not bad. Helen got challenges. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
I think she's got challenges.
Yeah. She's a little challenge, yeah.
But I was glad to see Sondheim out there, because, I mean, if you're really talking about truth-telling and trying to discern the night side, because see, the thing about Sondheim and myself and other, I'm no way on the same level in that regard, but you see, for those of us who look at the world through the lens of the catastrophic and the monstrous and horrendous and calamitous and scandalous, see, that's Kafka, that's Beckett, that's Chekhov, that's Melville, that's Morrison, that's Sondheim, you see.
Totally.
That's the view of the world. So you're keeping track of the indescribable levels of scars and bruises, not victimization, because it's heroic resistance against it all the time. But you know, the catastrophic in everyday life, like Chekhov. Catastrophic in an even broader sense. It could be Kafka in the penal colony. It could be Metamorphosis, beginning, first sentence, catastrophe. I am no longer human. I am this ugly, huge, smelly vermin. What's going on? It's catastrophic. That's Kafka. Well, the blues is what? Personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. And I come from a blues people. You see, and that's not victimology at all. It comes from the catastrophe of American slavery, the catastrophe of Jim Crow, the catastrophe of self-hatred, the catastrophe of self-violation and self-flagellation. That's America. It is distinctly America. It's not all of America, because most people come in and overlook the catastrophic. They move smoothly into the immigrant status and do work very hard and gain access to these unbelievable opportunities in America. That's beautiful. I celebrate it. But there's some truths here that's easy to hide and conceal. Sondheim hits the catastrophe. He does his ways. Company fall and go on and on.
He definitely does. Oh, yes. I was reading a conversation you had with somebody, I can't remember who now, and you were it was fascinating. You were talking about Melville's The Confidence Man, and you were and about Nathaniel Westmore's Lonely Hearts. This just is an eternal student's question. What would you suggest some books to this audience that are classics in American literature that they may not have read by any kind of author that they should read?
Oh, absolutely. We can stay till late tonight.
Maybe there's been a few that
I appreciate you mentioned that in Daedalus, recent issue of Daedalus, a dialogue with my dear friend and colleague at Princeton, D. Graham.
Right.
On Melville's Confidence Man, his last great prose fiction. Of our greatest writer, actually. I mean, Melville's the only American writer who was on the international stage coming out of the 19th century in that sense. Faulkner and Morrison are candidates, but Melville's there with Tolstoy, with Dickens and others. But the book, the text are the Adventures of Huck Finn at chapter 31. It's one of the most sublime moments in American literature. In fact, I know Brother David King was here who talks about this in his recent book, Melancholy Freedom. You all know chapter 31 when Huck has to make the decision. And when he takes the letter and rips it up, it says, my soul is going to hell when I'm going to resist civilization, spelled with an S. I'm going to resist the various kinds of sanctions against me that my aunt is putting for me. I'm standing for integrity and conscience, not even a political act. It's just a moral shaping of his soul. It's paideia in action. It's an attempt to engage of an act of maturation. And he tears it up and he says, I'd rather go to hell than deny the humanity of Nigger Jim, because he's been niggerized, and I recognize that niggerization is a lie. He's not less than human. It's a breakthrough. It's an unbelievable discovery for him as a white person to say, this Jim who's been niggerized is a human being, and I can revel in his humanity, and I need him and he needs me as a co-participant in the shaping of what it is to be American and democratic. Well, that's a great moment. It is. But that's Samuel Clemens. Now, the Clemens we know, he's had his own journeys. Of course. With Mark Twain, but that would be one. And I would certainly mention Nathan Weinstein, known to the world as Nathaniel West.
Right.
and Miss Lonely Hearts was one of the great, the second greatest comic novel ever written in America. You got to go to